My name is Moses Powell. I've been studying jiu-jitsu for the last 20 years. I'm the master for Visitation. And at this particular time, I'm a senior master in the art of jiu-jitsu Te and jiu-jitsu Ryu.
.radio.net presents to you some of the most deadly jiu-jitsu masters in the world. Trained in the vicious urban inner-city street combat system of Sanukas Ryu Jiu-Jitsu, this art was created by the legendary Dr. Moses Powell, the father of American contemporary jiu-jitsu and the greatest martial artist of the 20th century. This network brings together 4 radio shows 4 nights a week, starting with Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Each one teach one, with the Pia Master himself, Grandmaster Urban Muhammad, and his protege, Professor Terrence Hale. Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Modern Combat Masters, hosted by the inheritor of GM Billy Davis Jiu-Jitsu, guru of his own Filipino system, and Sanukas Master, Grandmaster Darrell Sargent, and his co-host, SIFU RESTITA DEJESUS. Thursday nights at 9 p.m. is Professor Tom Curry's radio talk show, a Kenpo Master and Professor of Sanukas Ryu, 20 years law enforcement, senior tactical training instructor for intelligence retired, and author of the official Sanukas Ryu Jiu-Jitsu testing and training curriculum. And Friday nights at 8 p.m. is Making the Connection, hosted by the president of DocRadio.net, Grandmaster in the art of Sanukas Ryu and Soke of Kuroshi Kaikan Martial Arts System, and president of the Family of Sanukas organization, Soki Haisan Khalik, and his co-host, Shihan Farouk Gibbs. All of these shows can be linked to online by typing in docradio.net or listening live at the scheduled time by dialing 646-716-6825. DocRadio.net is also proud to present DocMagazine.net, the world's largest martial art magazine dedicated to Dr. Moses Powell, Sanukas Ryu Eye-to-Eye Jiu-Jitsu, Urban Tactical Street Self-Defense, and Streetology. Please join our Facebook group by typing in docradio.net and follow us on Twitter by typing docradio.net. Thank you for your support, and in the words of Doc, eye to eye, heart to heart, to the wall and back, os.
All right.
Blog Talk Radio.
All right, welcome to Eye to Eye Radio on the Mat series, sponsored by www.senjokai.com or senjomartialarts.com. That's Senjo, SENJOKAI.com. Your premier Sanukas Ryu Jiu-Jitsu Academy, located here in Atlanta, Georgia, GA. Tonight we have a very special guest, a very good friend of mine, a gentleman by the name of Shihan Khris Allen, who's, like I said, a very, very good friend of mine and a hell of a martial artist that we'll be interviewing along with my co-host and my partner in crime, the architect, Furqan Shabazz. How we doing, Mr. Shabazz?
I'm doing great. Us.
Good, good. All right, well, since we only got a certain amount of time, let's go ahead and get this interview started, all right? So we're going to go ahead and start with the questions to Shihan Khris. By the way, how are you, Shihan Khris?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Good, good. Hey, I just want to say thank you for the chance to do the interview, man. You definitely one of the people I wanted to get with, and some of the people, you have some valuable knowledge, man, about Doc, even about Professor, about your brothers, the time Doc spent in Atlanta, as well as some of the other things you're into as far as lifestyle. We're gonna with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and Furqan Shabazz here go ahead and start off with the questioning, and I'll just go ahead and prod you for details if you don't mind.
That sounds good. All right.
How you
doing this afternoon, Shihan?
I'm doing well, sir. How about yourself?
Good. I remember when I first met you, one of the things that struck me about your dojos, I remember that picture of Doc. You had a picture of Doc right there in the dojo, and that always left a good impression with me. My first question is this: why did Dr. Moses Powell call you his godson? Like, what is that all about?
In Atlanta, Doc got real sick. He was my brother and I took him to the doctor, and he was diagnosed with a very grave illness. And at that time, they wanted to admit him into the hospital, but, Doc, he wasn't going to do that. So we eventually talked to the doctor and said, hey, what can we do? And my mom at that time lived in Florida, down near a Warm Springs lake, and we talked the doctor into, said, hey, my mom has been an emergency nurse, and at that time she was a chiropractor. And I said, what if we take him down to Florida? We'll make sure he takes his medicine, because, Doc wasn't all the best at that. Like all the guys, they never take all the medicine and all that kind of stuff. So we'll take him down there. We'll make sure that he takes his medicine, So we went down there for about 2 weeks. And during that time, my mom had moved from Atlanta to Florida, and she was very homesick. And she and Doc always got along. And they were down on the dock side next to the lake, and my brother and I were up at the house, and my mom was having real problems. She says, I really need somebody to watch after my children in Atlanta. And she asked Doc, she goes, I want you to take care of them. Next thing I know, they're hugging. I go down there, and see Eric and I go down there. They call us down there. Both of them are crying, and all that kind of stuff. And about this time, we'd been training with Doc probably about 2 years. And Doc said, your mom really touched me with something, and she asked me to be your guardian while you guys are in Atlanta, and she's down here, and from here on, you guys are going to be my godsons, and so that's how it started.
Wow! And to go further detail, you and your brother were both given Doc called both of you. Now, just to give you a personal story, in '97, when I went to see Doc in Vermont. One of the first things he did was ask me about you. Eric had came up later that year, and I met Eric before I even met you. You were in Georgia at the time. And I can tell you one thing what Doc said. He said, those boys, Chris and Eric, he says, he called them his godsons, and I never heard that title before. And it was Carol MOHAMMAD who had told me that he was talking about you and Eric. And when Doc mentioned me, he smiled, and I could tell, that he had a real good relationship with you and your brother. So I'm a first-hand and an eyewitness to Doc saying that, these are his godsons, and he absolutely adored both of you guys. So I just
we had really great times when he was here in Atlanta. It was more than an instructor-student relationship, mentor, and mentoree. We made a connection. For some reason, Eric and I always, we trained hard. We always did that. At that time, we were, a lot of Doc's transportation. We'd take him all over the place, and we were with him a tremendous amount of time. So it was very interesting,
Shihan, my next question. Historically, African Americans, coming up in the martial arts, they always had like a challenge, in terms of, when they come in certain arts, like they would get to a certain level and they always felt like maybe they were slighted or maybe they wasn't, getting what everyone else might have gotten. So the interesting thing is, here it is now, Sanukas, which was the founder being an African American, and you being a Caucasian in a predominantly African American body of students. What was that experience like? Like what was that like?
We were a shining light, absolutely. And all this it never really dawned on my brother and I. We never really looked at it like that. It was kind of strange, especially down in the South at that time in the 80s and things, to see this big African American man walking around with, being tailed by two young Caucasian guys. But as far as it being strange or something of that nature, Eric and I we just went in at it. We didn't really look at it like that. My father had mentioned it a couple of times. He was like, was never really involved in our martial arts, but he would come and watch us and make observations of that and ask us if everything, how we felt about it. And it was cool in the gang. We just liked to train, and we were attracted to whoever was the best, and that was Doc in Atlanta.
But more specifically, I remember you was telling me. I remember back in the day we had a conversation about you going to New York. I think it was at Worlds Collide, maybe in Brooklyn. And what was that experience like when you went to New York and you being one of the maybe the only or one of the few Caucasians in that dojo? What was that experience like?
That was rough. That was rough. At that time, I was talking to Tina about that later on. A couple of years after that experience, and she had told us that Doc had been really talking us up to. Grandmaster Anthony, Grandmaster Bill, all those guys at that time. And all these guys from New York were like, who are these young white boys coming from Atlanta? And we're going to bounce them pretty hard, So Doc, I think, Doc always gave a test that way. So that was probably one of his tests to us as far as, to see how we were going to run that action. But it was rough, man. The first time we went there, they tried to bounce us pretty good.
Yeah, hold on just 1 second, General. I'm getting a little feedback. That may be either from either you, Shabazz, or Orpheus. So someone needs to turn their radio down there for a second.
All right, hold on 1 second.
All right. Yeah. So because I'm getting feedback on my side here.
Okay.
All right. We there? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go. Go ahead. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. Now listen. To get into detail, you guys and listen. Of course, I got here around '95. And that was well after Doc had gone. And then, of course, I met Carol, and Carol told me about you were Chris and Eric. He always called you guys Chris and Eric. And I said, who the hell is Chris and Eric? He kept saying Chris and Eric, Doc's godsons. But how was it with you, and how was it with you, Carol, and Eric? Because you guys were a pretty tight unit in Atlanta. Atlanta was a pretty tight unit, especially over there at Adams Park and some other places you guys trained with Doc. How was it coming up with your brother? Because, Carol, one thing you told me that you guys always had a little bit of a sibling rivalry with each other as far as you would try to take each other's heads off.
Yeah, absolutely. After we got our black belts after we got our black belts and stuff like that in the dojo, Doc told us, he says, you guys are banned from training with each other. You make me nervous, because we were always trying to up one another, which, led to us really studying the martial art and, making sure that we had that one-upsman in that competition, which kept driving us to be better and better.
Well said.
All right, Shihan. All right.
Yeah.
What years did you train with him? What years did you train with Dr. Moses Powell? And also, what did he teach you as an in-house student? I would imagine you would really get some good teaching. So my question is, what years did you train with him, and what was that teaching like? Being an in-house student with him.
Well, we were training in Ishinru, and our instructor at that time in Ishinru was at one of the colleges that my mom taught at, and he knew that he was going to be leaving Atlanta, and he knew that Doc was in town at that time and took us to a seminar that Doc had and introduced us at that thing. I believe that was early '84 or maybe even late '83. I remember it was cold. But then Doc disappeared for about a year, and then our Ishinru instructor left, and Doc came back to Atlanta, and we got a call and said, "Hey, go and see this guy." And I was a sophomore in high school, so that would be late '84, early '85. It was when we first started training with Doc, and so we were we were like, oh, we're going to stay with our tradition of Ishinru. We're just going to go down here because we know he's a good trainer, and all this. And we got in there, and Doc was like, gosh, you can walk in here like robots here. I need to put some oil on you. And it took us about maybe 2 training sessions, 2 days, and we were like, yeah, you know what, we need to leave this Ishinru stuff behind because this stuff here is pretty damn good, man. So we did that, and you know, as it evolved, it was, you know, Grandmaster Carroll, myself, and my brother. You know, we were the staple students in Atlanta. You know, as Doc went around to different areas, like you said, Adams Park or Johnny A. White, and we had him at an athletic club over here in Mapleton, Georgia. You know, we'd have, you know, for a little while we'd have 30 guys we were training with, and then it would drop back down to, you know, me and Eric and Carol. Then we'd have 10 students, and then it would drop down back to me, Eric, and Carol. But, you know, the biggest thing about that is that during the summertime, my brother and I, we deliberately took jobs at night so that we could have the day to spend with Doc. So, you know, during the weekdays, we would, during the summer when we were in school, we'd go pick Doc up about 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, come back over to, take him to the gym where he had a small class, and then we'd work out with him there, and then come over to the house after that, and we'd all have lunch and train for another couple hours and do that until it was time to take him go over to Adams Park, you know, and have class there. So during the summer we were with him 7 days a week. You know, it was pretty incredible.
And let me ask you, the training that he was doing with you, was it the Sanukas eye to eye? Like, was it when he was evolving it to that more of those short, to the point, direct movements? Was it that kind of training?
No, it was in the late 80s, mid to late 80s. Doc was still moving really well. You know, he did have the knee pain, and he did have the hip pain, but that was being helped by my mom and the chiropractic and stuff that we were helping him out with. So he was moving really well. So you got that. I wouldn't say it was that same training that when he was in his, you know, 30s and early 40s, but he was still moving well, and so our dynamics were very hardcore, a lot of throwing, you know, the hell with the mats type stuff. You know, it was. But I think as you look at Sanukas and how it evolved over time, not only as Doc grew as a martial artist and his inner chi and spirituality and strength grew. It also had to do with his physical abilities also, you know. But you know, here in Atlanta, you know, he was training with some guys. You know, we came in and we would notice, you know, his arms would be real red. You know, when we would go pick him up sometimes, we're like, "What the heck is going on, Doc? What'd you do? Did you burn yourself or something?" And he was actually training with a guy down here on energy work and forecasting energy and you know, stuff like that. Doc was into some heavy duty stuff as far as martial art was concerned, you know, and that translated into where, you know, in his 50s, his late 50s and 60s, you know, he would, you know, just touch you and your arm would freeze or, you know, something like that. So it was cool stuff.
Yes, sir.
Sister, you have anything else before I move on?
No. You covered that thing perfectly.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay. All right. Shihan, what is the biggest problem with Sanukas rule right now, and how could we correct it, or how could it be corrected?
Well, you know, unfortunately, and I'm just going to be completely honest.
And Shihan, let me add something. And I'm going to change the biggest to the major. What's the major problem? And because you know, this can be a show unto itself. You know what I mean?
Right. You can get into that, but I'm going to be totally honest with you. You know, I think the major problem is the major problem with Sanukas is the fact that we were Sanukas was not given. Doc didn't ever take into account that he wouldn't be here anymore in Sanukas. You know, Professor Tom and I talk about it a lot. You know, and Doc would say, and I also talked to Gina about it, and they'd say, "Hey, we need to write this stuff down, or we need to, you know, put together a hierarchy or what was going on." And Doc's like, "Where the hell am I going? You know, why do I need to do that?" So the major problem with Sanukas right now is that the leadership from the top down and the organization was not put together by Doc. And when you have a system of martial art like that, then you break into, a lot of individual experiences with Doc collectively throughout his students, and it's not one true goal there, and that's with the way how it is with his first generation students. Now, a lot of people get into this I was first generation and I was second, this and that, or I was this and that. Listen, the first generation student is the people who were directly trained by Doc, no matter if it was 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s. Second generation students are the students of the first generation students. So my students would be second generation, and then when they go on, that would make third generation, right? So through that collective, all of us having those collective experiences with Doc, you're never going to get the group of first generation students looking eye to eye, look and say, okay, this is where it is, we're going to do this, because everybody's going, well, Doc said this, Doc said that, Doc said this. The way to fix, I truly believe, is it's not going to be as a collective. Everybody's not going to sit down and agree on one way or one thing like that. So us as first-generation students have to pass along our knowledge God gave us to our students and make sure that it's passed as uncut as possible to those people, so that to our students, so that the teachings that Doc gave us individually can continue to strive. And in that, you go, and in those first-generation students, you go and you find people like of that like mind. I go around training with a lot of guys, and you'll see the guys that do Sanukas as I was shown, and that's what I think it is. As a collective, I don't think you'll ever get all the first generation students together. That's not a bad thing, and that's not just been held to Sanukas. I mean, that happened in Aikido. Look at how many factions of Aikido had both.
All major systems. All major systems have the same problem.
So all the systems go through that, and we've done a lot of soul searching. I've gone out into other martial arts systems and friends, and where they've had the same issue. Some that were successful, where the leader of the system and the founder of the system gave specific direction, and the system survives and is strong. And then you have other systems where the leader was not specific in what they wanted, and people floundered for a while, 10, 15 years. But people who really loved the system and kept it to heart kept plodding along, kept the name alive, and then it gets better. So it's an evolution that Sanukas is going to have to go through. Nothing good or bad about it. It's just something we got to go through and keep teaching.
Absolutely. And to add to that, Shihan, one of the major problems we're having division, even among the earliest people, on things like how PO forms are performed and how the new forms are performed, who's authorized to teach the forms, and Doc didn't do Aikido Shihonage, or Doc didn't do Judo Iponse Nage. Doc, what do you think about all these differences and things like this that's going on? Doc didn't do that, or Doc didn't do this. And one of the things you said is that I remember in a conversation with you, is that some of the things that Doc taught you, Carol, and Eric, was more like a movement. Instead of all this touchy go, you guys moved in the system. You didn't stand in front of a guy and just simply hit a guy 20 times, and you said you guys were moving, not like Aikido, but you had movement that was within the Sanukas, And of course, I absolutely identify with that, because that's what I recall, more movement in the system, whereas these other guys, not mentioning names or personalities, but other guys, they take a real hard approach to Sanukas, and they stand up as if they were going, toe to toe, and kickboxing arena. You know, whereas,
right.
You know, a lot of, you know, how would you explain, not explain, but I think one of the main problems, besides not having a success with the system, is that the differences. I mean, it looks so different from Georgia to New York and from Miami to Atlanta. It looks different, you know. And we know Doc was evolving, but
yeah, well, that is the thing. Not only was Doc evolving, but Doc was also his physical abilities were eroding as he got older. I mean, we all saw that. So his instruction got to that way, you know. Hey, I did front kicks, you know, and side kicks and flying reverse kicks and stuff like that in Atlanta that under Doc's tutelage. You know, whoever says that Doc never put through him in Shihonagi, as done by, you know, Aikido. Now, it wasn't as open as Aikido. It was very, very closed Shihonagi that he would do. Hey, I landed on a damn hard ass mat with that by Doc doing that to me, you know. Or Ippon Seiyonagi, Doc was excellent at that stuff like that. I remember one time when he threw one of my peers, Chris Coleman.
Yes.
You know, in Adams Park, you know, no mat, concrete, bang, and you know, in front of all the women, just to make a point. Hey, my students are tough. I can make them do this stuff, you know. So, you know, it's just where people came in his life stage, you know, as to what part of type of Sanukas got. They got introduced to. So, you know, it's not anything wrong or right about it. You know, it's what was given to him. So it's hard to say. You know, obviously, the guys that trained with Doc when he was, you know, high flying in his 20s and 30s and 40s, they're going to have a different brand or different look on their Sanukas than say, you know, when Doc was in his middle life, when I got to him, he was still hard like that, but his movement was being refined and not really refined, but perfected, you know, and then the movement got perfected, and then as that happens, you know, when the movement gets perfected, then the energy gets perfected. And when the energy gets perfected, you don't have to move as much. And so, you know, that's where I think a lot of guys got in there. But, you know, like you said, the Sanukas in itself, you know, evolved over Doc's lifetime. And so, you know, I'm not going to be as arrogant to say, oh, the Sanukas that I got was the right one or that. That's all. You know, that can go wherever it needs to go.
Yeah. Believe me, we have people that arrogant to think the Sanukas they have is the only one.
But hey, that's their misgiving. You know.
Yeah, you know, one final
question. How many questions? We have another question, Shabazz, right?
Yeah.
Before you answer that, or go ahead and answer that, and we're just about at the 5-minute marker, just under it. And leave me a little time because I want to discuss one thing with Shihan Khris before we leave. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead and hit that question again.
Yeah. Before I give you that last question, I just wanted to comment on something we're talking about. And you could just give me a quick answer to this. When you talk about the syllabus that's being worked on, or that was worked on, he didn't leave a syllabus for the Sanukas rule. One of the reoccurring things that I hear over and over again when it comes to Doc, even after interviewing Grandmaster Noel and Professor Rahman, is that Doc had a history of telling people, you know, and I'm going to paraphrase, you know, you better come to class because what you see, you may never see it again. So if he was such an eccentric type of personality where he would have things that if you was away for 2 weeks, you may never even see it again, how could you truly say you have the curriculum?
Right. Well, one of the things that Doc did do as he started getting older and this, and was prodded by some of the first-generation students, particularly Professor Tom Curry. You know, Doc started to see that was something that needed to be done, and you know, he began to start to put things down, and you know, I've talked long and hard with Gina about this. I've questioned up and down with Professor Tom Curry about it, and because, you know, he came out with the curriculum on there originally. And in the, I believe it was the late 90s, you know, Doc started to settle down and understand that that's what needed to be done, because he couldn't give it physically anymore. So, you know, unfortunately, you know, it wasn't brought to paper underneath Doc's hands. It was all notes and you know, stuff like that you know, Professor Tom did, Gina did, things like that. And as the curriculum that Tom put out, it was just something that you know, we as a few guys said, okay, we need to finish this thing. Let's put this thing out. You know, so.
Understood. Shihan, my last question is this. What is the current state of Lucas Rule Jiu-Jitsu, in your opinion, and what is your message for future generations?
Train hard.
And we have
train hard.
2 minutes.
Train hard. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
The current state is, you know, it is what it is. It's going to be factions. There are certain groups getting together, and that's good. Some will make it, some won't. You know, it's all depending on what's in the heart. But the biggest thing is train hard. I personally will not have empty ranked students. You're going to know what you need to do. You know, I'm not going to give away any rank in my system. You know, when somebody comes up, I would rather somebody ask me, "This guy is only a yellow belt? Are you kidding me?" Instead of having somebody say, "That's your black belt." That's my advice to some instructors out there too.
I like that. I like that. You know, we got just about 90 seconds. Listen, go ahead and tell the people where you are and contact information, and you know, give your school a shout out there, just in case they're in the area.
I'm in the Marietta area in Atlanta, Georgia. I can be reached at bengaltigers@juno.com. That's BENGALTIGERS at Juno, JUNO.com. I do a small class. I keep my classes small. I like the personal attention that I'm able to give. You know, if anybody wants to train, you know, shoot me up on the email and, you know, come and work out.
Well, great. Listen, hopefully I would definitely want to talk to Eric Allen. And hopefully if you can give a little pinch to Professor Tom Curry, he's definitely set up for an interview. I would love to get him.
Sure, absolutely. I'll definitely do that. Matter of fact, I talked to Gina here recently too, and she's definitely interested in doing an interview with you also.
Definitely. And I also want Chris Allen Part 2.
Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Listen, stay tuned for the On the Mat series. We have Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad from the VSK Jiu-Jitsu system here tomorrow, so stay tuned. Shihan Khris Allen, thank you very much, and look forward to talking to you in the future.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks a lot for doing this. It's a really good thing.
All right. Take care.